Across the UK, there is a shortage of sperm donors. So to keep up with demand, thousands of samples have to be imported every year, largely from Denmark and the US. Well, a group of campaigners are arguing for a new solution. They say men should be able to consent for their sperm to be donated after they've died, in the same way as organs and other tissue. The campaigners say it's not just possible, it's needed and it's ethically permissible. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Dr. Gilly Band. He's a lab manager at London Sperm Clinic, Dr. Virginia Bolton from the British Fertility Society, and Jeffrey Ingold is a former sperm donor. Right, good evening to you all. There's a lot of people at home probably thinking, what? Dr. Gilly Band, just explain, how on earth would something like this work?
The donation?
Yes, from somebody who's passed away, from a man who's passed away.
From my experience, it's very different than a regular donation, which is an easy process. Yes, so we recruit donors on a daily basis. But when someone has passed away, then you will not receive the whole body. You will receive a part of the testicles, and then you need to extract that. And from my experience, is a bit of not only physically challenging, but also mentally challenging. At least it was for me.
But this is something you do right now in Israel?
I have done that before. It's not something that has been done in the UK, but I have done that before. It's a whole process. You have a window of up to 36 hours because it's important that you will actually extract viable, so motile sperm cells, in order to use that in a treatment in the future. So there are a lot of challenges to overcome.
So, Dr. Virginia Bolton, this sounds like really desperate measures, and that's largely because there is a huge shortage of donors in the UK, but you don't think this is the way to deal with that?
Well, I think it's one way to deal with it, but it's certainly not the first resort. I think as a first resort, and I should say from the outset that I'm really pleased, and I think we all are pleased, that this is highlighting the issue, which is at the core of this, which is that there are far too few sperm donors coming forward. And I think the root of that lies at the lack of public knowledge and awareness of the need for sperm donors. So, yes, we do have a need for more sperm donors, but goodness me, it would be so much more straightforward, and there are processes in place, and it would be technically much, much easier if we just publicise the need for living men to come forward at a relatively young age and make the donations actively and willingly while they're still alive.
Well, let's speak to a living young man right now.
That is me.
That would be you. What do you make of all of this?
I think it's something I would consider, and I think it's a really interesting idea, but also I think it speaks to a need to challenge the stigma around donating sperm. It's not something that people generally talk about, or it's kind of a joke that people would laugh at to make money. Whereas for me, it was really about, it was two of my friends who couldn't have a child. It was about helping them to kind of have the life that they want. And, you know, as a gay man, it kind of came easy to me because it was like, well, I can't have a family in the normal way. So it's something that I always considered. And I think having that conversation is something that we need to do as a society to help people in need.
And Dr. Bolton was talking about the lack of awareness. So now you know that this is a thing, this is an issue. Would you sign up to something like this, donating your sperm when you pass away?
Absolutely. I think it might sound a bit odd, but I think, you know, the stigma around it is similar. You know, it's the same with organ donation. Sometimes people get a little bit weirded out about, well, what would happen, you know, if they take my corneas or different parts of me. And I think, you know, if you understand the reasons why you're doing it, which is to help other people, I think that thread should come through it, and that's what it is for me.
Can I just say, though, from an academic point of view, and I think this is almost a purely academic paper, it seems like a very interesting and a possibility that we could pursue. But in practical terms, as we've heard from Gilly, it's actually very difficult. Physically, it's very difficult. Technically, it's very difficult. And not only that, but the sample of sperm that you can collect in this way is terribly, terribly poor. It would have to be frozen. So when it's thawed, very few sperm survive. You start off with a tiny number of sperm in the first place. You freeze them. You end up with even fewer sperm when you thaw. You then are presented with a highly technical process of trying to achieve fertilization with those sperm. So women wanting to use these samples for donation to them would have to undergo IVF and an additional procedure of injecting the sperm into the eggs. So from a technical point of view, it really is a last resort to use this as a source of donated sperm.
That's from a technical point of view, but Dr. Gilly Band, you have couples, women who are desperate for a child, and they could go to desperate measures by either going abroad, where you can question the safety of care, or they could even go to, I don't know, maybe to the black market. So this is, surely you need to do something to make sure that people have the right care.
Yes, so this is exactly why we have discussed planting the seed of awareness, having more donors. So basically out of 600 applicants per month, so it's not that we don't have enough, it's about the quality of the sperm, as my colleague here mentioned. It's about only 5% out of the 600 will get accepted onto the program. This sort of thing. So as Virginia mentioned, it's about the quality. Imagine that it takes 600 applicants and only 5% of them will get accepted and eventually start the regular donation. So that takes a bit of time.
Jeffrey, when you talk to people, you mentioned that there could be a bit of a stigma. What do people say whenever you do voluntarily? So many people didn't know, they'll know now.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they will.
I'm sure you've spoken to people, a few.
Yeah.
When you have, what's the reaction like?
I think it's generally surprise. I think people are, particularly of my age, in my friend group, in mid-20s, people are really confused as to, well, why would you want to do something like that? And I think people just don't really think of it as something that I can do. But I think once I explain kind of the reasons behind it, I think people really come around to it in a way where they're like, that's actually a really lovely thing to do. And I think it changes people's perceptions of what it means to be a sperm donor, because I don't think people look at me and are like, oh yeah, that's what they are.
If I may add, yes, it's not also a one-time thing. It's a process. First of all, we get to know them. So you've mentioned about the recipient, and it's a process of donation for a few months.
Dr. Gillibrand, this is obviously really, really fascinating from all of you, really. But Dr. Gillibrand and Dr. Virginia Bolton and Jeffrey